Welcome to the Gigs Podcast, live from the conference at Lititz, presented by Shure. I'm your host, Nikki Sanz, founder and CEO of Gigs, the professional career platform for the live event industry. This is a very special series that we get to do, hosted at Lititz, and we get to interview the very best in the touring and the live event industry to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, and the unreal moments of life gigging and lessons learned on the road. I'm so excited to welcome Brandon Fitzgerald, aka Fitz, a skilled tour rigger from Washington, D.C., with a strong foundation in IATSE Local 22. Brandon's expertise spans tour rigging, permanent installs, counterweight rigging, VectorWorks drafting, and a variety of production elements. We're going to get all into it. Brandon, welcome to the Gigs Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I know you were speaking on multiple panels yesterday. I want to get into your start in DC and just start there.
Okay. I started in the production business when I was about 19. The interesting thing was this was actually an accident. I was home. My grandfather was a prop master at the National Theater, which is the second oldest theater in the country in DC. And he was on his way to retirement. When I started, he said, hey, you're in college, you're trying to figure your life out, here's a good part-time job. And I was like, okay, cool, like what I gotta do? And he was like, they'll tell you. I was like, okay. And so I went to Home Depot, bought some random tools. And my first gig was a hotel gig that I did absolutely nothing for 8 hours. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if this is what my life is like, I was like, I can do this. And then the next gig was the total opposite. My first ever really big show was when Taylor Swift kicked off her 1989 tour in
Never
DC.
heard of her.
And never heard of her.
What?
And I remember didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything about production. And I remember the moment that I determined that this was what I wanted to do. I walked on stage, I turned around, and I remember looking at the sea of people, and then I remember I turned and looked up, and I saw riggers standing on the roof. And I asked somebody, I said, who are they? And the guy looked at me, he was like, this is your first day? And I said, no, it is. And he said, oh, okay. He said, you don't know anything. He said, those are riggers. And I said, I want to do that. And that mentality has taken me really far. Like I never thought that I would get here. I've always just been along for the ride. Like, I just wanted to do something that I thought was fun. I didn't know riggers got paid. I didn't know anything. Like, I was just like, they climbed up there? Yeah, let's do that. Up there? I was like, yeah, let's do that. Like, that looks like it's fun. And then, so I begged people to teach me for years. And
was that an arena?
It was a G2 stage. It was at Nats Park.
Dang.
It was at Nats Park.
Huge.
And then,
okay.
Yeah, it was a big show. It was her first stop in 1989. I'll never forget it.
Oh, yeah.
And I still have the T-shirt, actually. And from there...
So were you a local at that point?
Yes, I was a local
Can you
in
talk
DC.
about IATSE and that process?
DC's local is a little bit different. We have, everybody has like a list system or referral list where you can go sign up and be general labor. It takes a while and consistency to begin to determine what you like.
Yeah.
Because you don't get to pick your department. Like, you show up and then they say, this is what you're doing today. And it's like, okay, it is what it is. Until you have established, like, you can be requested for certain things. I knew from the beginning, once I saw what rigging was, I had no interest in anything else. Like, I've done a lot of different things. My IATSE career has been trial by fire a lot. I not only was working for the IATSE, but I freelanced for every company in DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Damn.
I think that there is not a venue in the DMV area that I haven't worked or rigged in the last 15 years. Like, I've hit a lot of venues. And so I created a lot of rapport with a lot of people, but I wanted to rig. Like, that's all I wanted to do. My first rigging gig was a gig called the Moonrise Festival. It was at Pimlico Raceway up in Baltimore.
Okay.
And I had a friend of mine, Kenny Henderson, who's currently a a set carp for Usher right now.
Sick.
Shout out to Kenny. He called me and he said, "You really want to learn how to rig?" And I said, "Yeah, man, whatever I got to do." And I had like $423 in my account. And he said, I was like 21. And he said, "Buy a harness and buy some rope. I'll send you the link." He said, "Come see me next Friday." And I said, "Okay, where?" And he was like, "You're going to do this gig. It's going to suck." He was like, "But it'll be your end." And I said, "Okay." It was Moonrise Festival at Pimlico Raceway in Baltimore, where the Preakness is held. It was a terrible gig. It was covered in mud. It's outside. It's a steel gig. It was the worst. Like, it was one of those gigs where, like, now looking back on it, I was like, oh, God, that was terrible. But at that moment, I was like, he took a shot on me. Yeah. So, like, now, like, I'm locked in. Started rigging and...
What does that look like? What is day one? Also, what does steel gig mean?
So, you've been to a festival.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. A steel gig is, in outdoor situations, usually in festivals, there are two different calls. There's a production call, which is lighting, video, sound, rigging, whatever. But then there's a steel call to build the structure. Mm-hmm. That, on loadouts, is usually like if you're doing a scaffing structure versus like a black steel structure like Stageco or like a erected stage like G2 or Brown United or people like that. Scaffold is built piece by piece. So it's like construction scaffolding that you would see on the outside of a building, they're using to build a structure, which is what the festival is going to be on. That was how this was. So it's not more arduous, it's just particular. Like it is very nuanced and it's almost repetitive. It's some scaffold gigs suck, basically.
Yeah.
But that was where I got my start. Wow. And I started meeting all these guys who were riggers, and they looked at me like this young, gleeful kid that didn't know no better. And I didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. And I started rigging for freelance companies.
Got it.
And then the union caught wind that I was rigging for other people. And then they finally brought me into the fold. And when they brought me into the fold, I had I've had a lot of great teachers over the years. One of the best teachers I've ever had is the head rigger of Jiffy Lube Live down in Virginia. His name is Billy Miller. I love him to death. He gave me a shot. He had a rule where there are two types of riggers, even though everybody's a rigger, up riggers and down riggers.
Okay.
And
which means
down riggers are usually on the ground providing the support for up riggers to pull chains. So steel's being built, floors being marked out. Like it is a symbiotic relationship. Like it is one cannot do the job without the other, and both are equally as important. But there was a rule: you had to learn how to build steel on the ground before you got to go upstairs. Well, he was short. And so he came to me and he said, "Hey, listen." He's like, "I know what my rule is." He said, "I'm about to break my rule. I need you to go get dressed." And I said, first time ever up. I was nervous. I was scared. I was like, okay, like, cool. So that happens. I do the show. I can't even remember what show it was. And
how many feet in the air are you?
75 feet.
75 feet up. You have a harness on.
I have a harness on, rope, and a whole bunch of stuff I didn't need at the time because I didn't know any better. And we get the job done. I'm nervous. I'm figuring out my knots and all types of other stuff. In DC, we have a rigging coordinator because we have his name is Ming Chen, great, excellent rigger, very nice man. He does a lot of the booking for riggers in DC because we have so many spaces that. And he's also one of the things that I say he's very, very talented at is that he doesn't put people in positions where they will not thrive. Because just because you're a rigger doesn't necessarily mean that you can rig in every space. And I've learned that. And there are some people that are very talented and some people have niches and they're very good at certain things and they're not good at other things. So he combines teams so that they work well. He's very good at it. Ming calls me that day after the load-in. And I said, it's about 6 o'clock. And I'm like, why is Ming calling me? And mind you, I didn't know him at this point. So I'm getting a phone call from him and I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I just got fired. I don't know what I did wrong. I'm replaying the whole, like this is all in 30 seconds and I've replayed 6 hours of a day.
So this is after the first time uprigger.
The first time uprigging, yes.
No idea what's going on.
Nope, I get a phone call.
This big guy is calling you. Okay, got it.
I get a phone call and I said, hey. And he says, hey, you're not going back to Jiffy Lube. And I was like, what did I do? And he said, no, you didn't do anything wrong. He said, Billy overbooked. He said, and I'm short. So come to the arena, which is Cap 1 Arena. And I said, okay. At Cap 1, there is a list. There's a list of who's going to be up on the loadout and who's going to be down. Didn't know that. This is my first rigging call here. So I had been a stagehand there for a while. I had never rigged there. So I go in, put my bag down, check in, and I'm sitting down. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? I was like, I'm waiting to start pushing out cases. He said, did you look at the sheet? And I said, what sheet? He said, I forgot this is your first day. So he walks me to the sheet, and it's 2 columns. It has everybody's name, it has a column. It says up, it says down. And he said, look at your name. And I looked at my name, and it said up. And I said, oh, okay, let's do it. I walk upstairs, and everybody at this point who had been rigging in D.C. were like older brothers to me. Like, they had seen me start from absolutely nothing.
And you're pushing cases down there.
Yeah.
Doing lighting, video, audio,
whatever it is. And so they are seeing me, like, I'm super green in rigging. And I get upstairs, I take the elevator upstairs, and all of them are standing at the door smoking. And I got my little backpack, and I got my rope, and I'm like, hey, y'all. And they're like, the hell are you doing? And I said... Ming sent me up here, and they said, really? I said, yeah. And they're like, don't go nowhere. They call him on the phone, and they said, did you send Fitz up here? And he said, yeah. He said, I remember exactly what he said. He said, burn him up. And they said, done. And they hung up the phone. And that was my introduction into uprigging. That was 101 feet.
Ooh.
And a little.
No fear?
No.
Definite fear?
Never let a rigger tell you that he's not scared. A rigger that's not scared is dangerous. You have to everybody has that fear. The difference is that you have to be able to focus on the task at hand. You have to have a healthy respect for the height. If you don't, it will kill you. Right. That's how mistakes are made.
What's an example of a mistake?
A friend of ours in the industry passed away a couple years ago at Coachella. He had been rigging for a very long time. He was known. He was a veteran. He made a bad judgment call, and he walked up a tower without a harness on, something that he had done 1,000 times. He slipped. He fell 65 feet, center stage, and died in the middle of the load-in. News got around the country about his passing in an hour. I was in an entirely different place when I found out. It's the complacency that will kill you. Mm-hmm. And that is why I say any rigger that tells you he's not afraid of heights is lying to you, or he's dangerous, because you have to have that respect of what you're doing. And if you get too I've had that happen to me before. I've moved too fast in a grid, walked around, not clipped off, and felt my foot slide, and it was like the universe said, hey, slow down, clip off, clip off. And riggers usually now, like, a lot of the safety culture has gotten a lot better. Where now, like, there is a self-check and a checks and balances system where I would want somebody to tell me, hey, clip off. Like, you get comfortable, you get complacent, you think about what you have to do. And so the safety aspects sometimes, especially uprigging, slip your mind.
Yeah.
But you need that sense of accountability amongst other riggers. That's how we keep each other safe.
So you're up there in a harness, and you have clip. What is that? A rope? You have a safety lanyard. Got it.
A safety lanyard, there are a lot of safety lanyards that are different. This standard thing is that a safety lanyard, there are a lot of misconceptions for those that don't rig. If you have on a harness and a lanyard that is being used properly, you are still going to fall. I have to say that because people think that that's not true. You will still fall.
How far?
You will not plummet.
Whew.
So when a shock pack, which is on the back of a Y lanyard, so if you see somebody go off and they have 2 hooks on their side, it's attached to the dorsal on the back of the neck, it expands to about 18 feet. So it is designed. It is designed to slow your trajectory down over that amount of time, like a yo-yo, so that you don't have that sudden stop. Because shock trauma, and it's funny, a colleague of mine, Shaban Colleen, wrote an article about harness trauma, and I think everyone who rigs should read it. It talks about what the body goes through in suspension trauma, and why when you fall, even though you didn't die, the clock starts because blood begins to pool, you begin to lose consciousness, like organ damage kicks in, brain damage can kick in. There's a lot of science behind suspension trauma that she wrote a series of papers on that were incredible.
Whew.
And rigging is, and it's not just us. Like, if you put on a harness, if you're a lighting tech, a video tech, it doesn't matter. Like, the same safety standards apply. Mm-hmm. So I treat them with the same amount of respect and same amount of safety. You put a harness on and you go up, I want you to be safe.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
So while you fall, you slip, you're in this harness, but you're hanging.
Yes.
By the lanyard.
Right here.
And hell, I mean, that lanyard might not always work, right? I mean, has that ever happened? Like a faulty, like what checks are you doing before you put on a harness?
You always check your harness to make sure that there are no abrasions and stitching. Like, there are no, leaving your harness in sunlight and UV light in UV light for too long can deteriorate the material.
Yeah.
Like, you can't store it in salt water. Like, there are a lot of different mechanisms, and that they tell you, like, to look at. Like, when you buy a harness, there are inspection things that you can check, and other people, like other riggers, can check your harness and be like, don't use this, don't check this, or whatever. Yeah. Same thing with lanyards. Now, a shock lanyard is supposed to have a 3,000-pound safety rating. So you falling, I'm 235 pounds. Me falling at terminal velocity, I'm not going to hit 3,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. It is designed to slow me down, so that the weakest point in the system, actually, if everything is done correctly, the weakest point in the system is your actual body. Mm. Everything else can withstand the force. My harness can hold, I think, about 23 kilonewtons. It's designed to hold a person that's about 350 pounds.
Got it.
But the lanyard itself can sustain a force of about 23 kilonewtons.
Got it.
So the weakest part of the system, and this is the same thing, and this is like rigging, this is a rigging kind of like cheat sheet, or not really a cheat sheet, but it's something that we all know, or it's common knowledge, is that when you are hanging things, you need to always be able to identify the weakest part of the system, because that's always the first part of the system that will fail. Mm. And so the weakest part of the system in a free fall is the body. The body's malleable. So limbs break, joints break, muscles tear. It happens.
Yeah.
Just because you fall doesn't mean that you have survived. Now we have to rescue you. Because you're hanging.
About that? How the hell does that happen?
You have a rescue team.
Gee.
You have a rescue team, and it also depends on the situation. Like, there are some stages, like if you do if you're doing an outdoor stage, like it could be easier to save somebody versus somebody who fell 12 feet off a beam and now they're hanging below the grid, but now you can't reach them. So what's the plan? And then you have plans for if they're unconscious. Like, there are a lot of different things to do, and usually that comes into rope access and being able to rappel off of ropes and do rope to rope transfers and put them on your body and be able to get down. There are a lot of rigging gets very convoluted, especially when you are getting to the safety of flying people and rescuing people. Wow, it gets very interesting.
When I first started and I was looking up there, I could not believe my eyes at truly how high up you guys are. And someone told me a lot of them, especially locals, are retired firefighters.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
A lot of retired firefighters, a lot of ex-military.
Yeah.
A lot of serial rock climbers.
Right.
Yeah.
What besides, the Taylor Swift and looking up there and being like, I got to get up there, have you always had that kind of maybe a smaller amygdala, like a little less fear than most people?
I'm a daredevil at heart.
Oh, there we go.
I'm a daredevil at heart. So, like,
yeah.
I was, when I saw it, 21-year-old me was so stupid. I remember when I saw it, I said, they getting paid to climb? I could climb. Not knowing what the job was, I was like, I could do that shit. And that was kind of how it went.
So you're finally doing this first up rig. Mm-hmm. The guys are like giving you hell, and then you do it. Mm-hmm. What's next for you then?
Oh, they're still giving me hell. Make no mistake. They still give me hell to this day, and I love them for it. After I started rigging for a while, it was still the day in and day out grind of like local work.
Yeah.
And it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, what now? And COVID happened. COVID happened, and that was difficult. And that was difficult because our industry is a very nuanced place.
Yeah.
And not many people understand what we do. They can't explain why your boss calls you at 6 p.m. on a Friday and you say, oh, I got to go to work and I can't hang out.
Yeah.
They don't understand why you're tired and my tired are not the same because I've been on my feet for 21 hours and I got on a bus for 2 hours of sleep and did it again. Like, we're not playing the same game. But because of that also, personal relationships suffer. Friendships suffer. Relationships suffer. And our industry, I in COVID, I realized that if you do not do what I do, there's a version of me that you don't understand. And that is something that I was very vocal about during COVID is please be patient with those who do what we do because our entire world was taken from us overnight. There was no, oh, you can work virtually. No, it was you have to have a new identity for 18 months.
That's the difference.
And that's something that it takes a special type of person to do what we do, to work in entertainment at all. Whether you stream on podcasts, whether you film, whether you do broadcasting, whether you do live events, it is a different life.
Yeah.
And not many people, unless you do what we do, not only understand it, respect it.
Yeah. They think it's just a fun, like,
Yeah.
party.
Yeah,
Sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I'm like, I know, I never forget I had a job interview with I don't remember who it was with, but it was, the woman asked me, the recruiter asked me, it was during COVID, and she said, how do you function in a crisis? And my response was, well, what do you define as a crisis?
Oh, yeah.
And she said, something has gone wrong. And I said, okay, and you have to figure out how to fix it. And I said, okay, how much time do I have? And she looked at me and she said, you got about 30 minutes. I said, how big is the problem? And she was like, moderate. I said, that's easy. And she looked at me and she said, what do you mean that's evening? I said, ma'am, I'm from an industry where I've seen a whole show go dark and we had to figure it out in 15 seconds.
Yep.
I said, I understand that you don't know what entertainment technicians do. I said, but they are some of the people, they are some of the best people that can perform under a crisis. I said, because we do not have time.
It's kind of the only way.
I said, there's no gearing up to this. It's all an oh shit moment. Figure it out. I was like, I can't explain to you what it's like to see a board crash and watch an LD panic because a fixture, a show with 1,000 lights, he lost them all. And nobody else has noticed but him. I was like, you don't know what him scrambling around, ripping out a desk, unpatching stuff, and he got 90 seconds. That's crunch time. 30 minutes?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And she said to me, and it's funny in that interview, she said, there's a lot of people that have been that were like entertainment or like AV tech. I said, they're the best people you could ever hire. I said, because they can learn anything on the dot.
Yeah.
I said, and they retain it.
Yeah.
And so from there, I recognized that COVID was very difficult, but it allowed me to realize that this is my home.
No.
And this is where I belong.
Yeah.
And then I did Broadway for a while.
Ooh.
Yeah, I did Broadway for about 4 months.
Touring Broadway or?
Touring Broadway.
Oh, let's talk about it.
I did. I was the swing tech for My Fair Lady out of the Lincoln Center.
Wow.
Did a tour with them for a little while. And while I was on tour with them, I got a dream job at the Wolf Trap Foundation in Virginia.
Okay.
I was the assistant carpenter there for 2 years.
Difference between carpenter and rigger.
Rigging is a subset of carpentry, technically. But it is often seen as its own department. But in the original, when departments were kind of defined, rigging is still technically a subset of carpentry.
You're building.
You're still building,
Yeah.
correct. The difference is rigging is aerial. I was the assistant carpenter there. In a theater aspect, you usually have head carpenter, assistant carpenter, flyman, head electrician, prop master, and then assistants. I was the assistant carpenter, but I was kind of the catch-all to everybody else. So it was a great experience. I worked with a lot of great people, but when I came off that Broadway tour, I remember saying to myself, I was like, you really liked being on the road. But Broadway wasn't fast enough for me. Yeah. It was, we come in, we do an 8-hour load-in. Now we sit for 2 weeks. And I was like,
right, yeah.
Initially it was great. And then I was like, it was the concept of being locked into a contract for a year or 18 months. And it getting mundane. One thing about me is that I like rigging specifically because it is different, but it is the same all the time. Mm-hmm. And I get new buildings, I get new challenges, but it's the same principles. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I was like, I want to get into rock and roll. I had made a connection some years back who is my current stage manager. He gave me a phone call and he said, would you like to go out? I said, absolutely. And I went out. My first rock and roll tour was SZA's SOS tour in 23.
Let's go.
And I went out. I was the third rigger on the tour. Had a wonderful time. Some things happened. They ended up making me the head rigger for the show. Whew. I did all of this year, 2024. Nice. And then while I was out on SZA, I got asked to be the head rigger for System of a Down. So I did outside lands in San Francisco. Wow. And then while I was out there, my friend G calls me, who's the stage manager for Lainey Wilson, Gerald McDougal, and he says, hey, I need a favor. And I was like, what do you need? He was like, I need a rigger. I said, when? He said, now. I was like, okay, well, when do you want me to fly out? He said, where are you at? I said, I'm in San Fran. He said, just change your flight to LA. I'll see you in LA. And I was like, okay. And then I was the head rigger for Lainey Wilson.
And this is the snowball.
Yeah, it happens fast.
You're like, man, I want this, I want this, I want this. Boom. Can you even handle it all?
And now you're like, oh. Cool.
Wow. So SZA, how long was that tour?
I picked up, so she did a full year in 2023. I did not join them until September of 2023. Yep. But then we did from February to August of this year. We did South America, we did Australia, we did London, we did Ireland, we did Denmark, we did Paris, we did Barcelona, we did Montreal. Like we burned a lot of jet fuel this last year. Like we burned a lot of jet fuel. And
Is that your first world tour?
First world tour.
That's fucking First world tour. And then you hop on, so you fly to LA, do Lainey Wilson.
Yeah, I did System in between that.
Oh, System, right.
I did System of a Down in between that for like 2 weeks.
What is that?
System of a Down is an older rock band that had prominence in the 90s. Nice. They were doing the Outside Lands Festival. It was them, Deftones, and I think like Viagra Boys and a couple other people. Cool. But they needed a rigger for the show, and I said sure. So I did the prep work for the motors and everything out in Vegas, and then I went to San Fran and did that, and it was great. Paul Bender was the production manager. Great guy. Loved working for him. Yeah. And and then I got a phone call to come to Lainey Wilson.
And you're currently still doing Lainey,
Currently still doing Lainey Wilson. We got one more show next week.
She does not stop, so that's a good gig.
Yeah, we got one more show next week.
Are you still doing local work when you're home?
Every so often. I find myself now, I will take a local rigging gig every so often because I need to remind myself why I love what I do. Mm. And when you start touring and you start being a crew chief or head of a department, like you can lose the love of what you used to do.
Why?
Because it gets more convoluted. Like now I'm doing overlays and advancing, and I'm on production meetings, and I'm having like I just had they're starting to bring me into design meetings.
Damn.
To talk about designing and doing rigging design for different shows, and we're having those types of conversations. And while I love all of that, what originally got me into rigging was standing on a beam and pulling some chains. And so every so often, it is very nice to go anywhere and just be like, hey, I'm here. Like, if y'all need something, like, I'll help out. And they'll be like, can you please come? And I'll be like, sure. And then to not have tour brain responsibility, even though it's very difficult for me to turn off, which is why I don't take local gigs often. It's nice to have a reset every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's like getting it out of your system. Like, okay, like, yeah, I still love this. Okay.
Yeah.
And
A little
cool.
fun. You don't have the responsibility of being the leader.
Correct.
You're doing the gig.
Correct. Like, I'm here to do what you tell me to do, and that's it.
Well, clearly, once you got to your level, though, there's no going back.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword. It's hard because if once you have been in a position of leadership, or not even a position of leadership, in a position where your opinion matters.
Yeah.
When somebody does something that you don't like or that you disagree with, it is harder to bite your tongue because you've been in their shoes. So you know exactly what to say, but it's like, this is your show, it's not mine. I'm gonna let you do what you want to do, even though I disagree.
Tough.
It's a hard, and that's why I've kind of like, you know, I don't really work at home as much. I usually do it if I got a couple of mentors that if they call me and say, hey, I need a favor, are you home? I'm like, yeah, I got you. I'll come hang out.
Can we talk about weight?
Sure.
And what, like, because rigging is a lot of math of what that facility can take. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? And especially, I guess, if you're getting more into rigging design too, how does that work? How far in advance does that happen? And then can you talk about walk and chalk too?
Okay, so when you're talking about advancing a show,
Yeah.
usually I'm an information whore. If I can't find out, I know somebody who can, and I'm gonna ask.
Brandon Fitz, information whore.
Yeah. I'm gonna find out. So I don't like not knowing things.
Yeah.
And so with me, usually when I get routing, it also depends on a series of different things. One, if I get routing and you want me to do all of the advancing, I start immediately.
Yeah.
But sometimes productions will have already done it. Mm-hmm. I've made a lot of contacts in the very short time that I've been tour rigging. I also have a lot of mentors that are tour riggers that have a lot of files. So I'll be like, okay, I'll look at a routing situation and say, you got a tech pack for these cities? And they're like, yeah, I'll send it to you. Cool. And they'll send it and it'll let me know, okay, we have engineering specs. I can see what the building's rated for. I can see, okay, we have a beam that's maybe 20 feet. How many things can I hang in that section? And then I start getting plots. We start doing weights. We start figuring out what things weigh. And then it then becomes a matter, and that's what rehearsal is for. Like, we come in, like, Rock Lititz is an amazing place.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place, and you can hang pretty much anything in this building.
Yeah.
But you also have to think about transport.
Yeah.
There are a lot of shows, and Lititz does a wonderful job of creating a space where you can see a show and then be like, that's not going to travel well. That's not going to travel well. We might want to tweak that. Let's get rid of it. Interesting. And so you shave it down. That's what rehearsal is for. Yeah. Like, yes, it is for the artist, but it is mainly for the production.
Of course.
For us to determine that necessarily wasn't the best decision. Can we change that? Do we need to take this? Like, blah, 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 blah. And if things need to get fixed, usually we're by a shop, and which is why Lititz is such a great place, because you have Claire, you have Atomic, you have Fuse. Like, everybody's right here. So it's... if you want to swap out or see different fixtures, you just go next door. Mm-hmm. And so those types of discussions come relatively early. There are some buildings that have their challenges. And it's not only about weight capacity, but beam placement.
The Saddle Dome in Calgary. I remember seeing and being like, this show is so different than the rest of the tour, because that venue is just, everything hangs weird. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to have less.
You do. And the thing is that rigging is an exercise in futility and adaptation. You always want to hang the show that you wrote down or that you have a picture for exactly correct. 98% of the time, that's not right.
Ugh.
It's not going to happen.
Most of the time?
It's not going to happen. You have a game plan. But it's very rare that things hit dead on all the time. There are adjustments that have to be made. Yeah. And that's what we're accustomed to. Some buildings are way easier than others. Yeah. Way easier than others. There are some buildings that I would not go back to if I didn't have a choice.
Can you tell me? We can keep it nice. Or you...
One building that has been difficult, that is notoriously difficult, that is actually getting better. And shout out to Tim Strawbridge because he's the head rigger of Baltimore CFG Arena. Okay. CFG Arena, I used to uprig there when nobody wanted to rig there. They used to have sound clouds that were mounted in the ceiling that were basically a gigantic pain in the ass. They were just a large obstruction. And it was very difficult for tours to come in to rig the way that they wanted because the building was so atypical. And now they have done renovations and shows are now like coming in and they've been doing an excellent job in refurbishing the building and gearing it towards what they wanted it to be because they don't have a sports team. So the only revenue that the building gets is from concerts.
Yeah, they're going to change it.
So it makes sense to gear the building towards what your moneymaker is.
Yes.
And so that was a notorious building that was very difficult to rig in that is now slowly getting better. It's been significantly better in the last 10 years than it's been 50 before that.
How do you work around jumbotrons?
Cheat. It depends. It depends. Like a lot of shows can be, prime example, a lot of shows start on one side of the arena, upstage, and then work their way down. But now recently, and not recently, but within the last like 15 years, a lot more tours are in the round.
Right.
Travis Scott did an excellent job of encompassing a jumbotron in his show while rigging around it with his video wall. So his video wall was an oval, but it wrapped around the jumbotron, so it was designed where they didn't have to fight through it. And that's what usually that's what usually makes sense. Like, you're not going to get rid of the jumbotron. You're not. So how can we put a show around this obstruction and still have a great show? Now, Chase Center, I think it's Chase Center, San Fran, Oakland. Okay. Their jumbotron recedes. Oh. So it actually goes up and flushes with the. It's
That's
beautiful.
Gorgeous.
It's pretty cool. Wow. It's pretty cool. It was actually done by a rigging company called Chicago Flyhouse. It's incredible.
Oh my gosh! Wait, I'm sorry. This just popped into my head. Yes, all of this for arenas. What the hell do you do in a stadium? Is that steel? Mm-hmm. You're building the full structure
every time.
Oof.
Every time.
Do you enjoy that?
I do. Usually, you also have to think about, like, from a logistics standpoint, like, we leapfrog. Yeah. So we're in Pennsylvania. Right. Next city is New York. Next city after that, let's say it's Boston. Yeah. The structure that's leaving here is not going to New York. Right. It's going straight to Boston. Yeah. You have to think about, you only get 24 hours in a day. And it takes a day to build the structure. So they're going to send them to the next city, get a crew out there, an advanced crew, start it. And this is where production managers and tour managers are so very important, because the logistics of that, to send the right trucks the right direction, and you're talking 8-hour gaps in between places like these. This is why these conversations are always important, and having those meetings and having that line of communication. Because if somebody messes up and sends a truck to the wrong city, you could burn 2 cities. Ooh. Yeah, you could make a mistake.
And so you could be on a crew that just does the advance work and never sees the show.
Pink, prime example.
Oh, there we go.
Daniel Porter, he's actually here. He was the head rigger for Pink. And they had a crew that just did advances. They never saw the show. They never touched the loadout. They would do the load in, get the structure up, get the pinches up, and go right to the next city. Wow. And start it again.
I'm sure that's what Taylor Swift. I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. When you get a show of that magnitude, the crew that you see is not all the crew that's working.
I bet they even have a loadout crew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. And that's just the rigging department.
Right.
I'm saying that's just the rigging department.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you want to be on a stadium at some point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Okay.
That's the only thing that I haven't rigged in.
Okay.
That's the only thing that I haven't rigged in is a stadium. So we'll see.
All right, we'll do this in a year, and
we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
A lot can happen in 1 year, man.
A lot can happen.
Wow.
In 1 year.
We are. I really want to continue this for a whole nother damn hour. That's why we're doing this again next year.
Of course.
But thank you so much for doing this. This was so cool getting to know you. And
thank you for having me.
How can people find you?
How can people find me? Okay. The best way to really get in contact with me is LinkedIn, honestly.
Okay.
I actually check that and communicate that way more than anything else. And I'll leave you my
we'll put in the
email
notes.
address and my email address and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm always down to talk and give advice or to get opinions. I wish the one thing that I always strive to do is I know that there are people, men, women, who are just starting their entertainment career, and when you are first starting, you have no idea what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
You have absolutely no clue. And finding somebody who is a mentor who can guide you is very difficult. And it's almost embarrassing because you're like, I don't want to tell you that I don't know what I'm doing, but I really don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And so I've always tried to make myself as approachable as possible just so that I can give somebody else that shot that I wish somebody would have given me when I started.
Yeah.
Because it'll stress you out. Because then you start questioning, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Like, am I wasting my life? Like, what is going on? It gets better. It gets a lot better.
And then you're just too busy. You got to start saying no.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the best.
Thank you so much.
Fitz, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Today on the Gigs podcast, we are joined by Dan Hart, aka ICE. He's a production manager at Veterans United Home Loans Amphitheater in Virginia Beach and a Live Nation promoter rep for the Southeast and Capital regions. With over 3 decades of experience, ICE has toured with legends like Patti LaBelle and managed productions across Southern Virginia, the Carolinas, and Savannah. From starting as a drum tech to becoming the go-to Live Nation promoter rep for the Southeast, ICE has done it all. Dan, ICE, welcome to the Gigs podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this. This is so cool.
This is really cool.
And this is your first year at Lititz?
First time.
Conference?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Have you been to Lititz in general?
Never.
Oh,
No,
the whole
I didn't even know
campus.
it existed, but this is, got here in the past few days of just, checking everything out. It's incredible. Never knew it was here.
Yeah. So you have all these decades of work in the industry. Take me to the beginning of it. What got you
I
first
got
to
into
it?
this by accident. I went to a Pantera concert at a little club in the Virginia Beach on the ocean front.
Yeah.
And this was before barricades were a thing. So me being, here in Pantera, this is like my new favorite band. I'm going to get to the front of the stage. So I sure as hell did. I ran up there and had my arms on the wedges like I'm not moving from this spot. Bands, like the opening acts are on, everybody's getting up and doing their stage diving thing. I'm, still holding on to my spot, and then somebody lands on the back of my head, and I just crack my eye on the speaker. I'm like, oh, great. And I'm just holding on to it. I said, it's going to bleed. Sure enough, I pull away, and it just bleeds, and I'm like, crap. So I went into the bathroom. I'm trying to wash it up and stop the bleeding, and the manager goes, man, you got to go to the hospital, get stitched up. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I said, my band's about to come on. He goes, and I just gave him the hardest time, for 10 minutes. He's like, look, you're going to the hospital, you're going to get stitched up, and then you're going to come back and you're going to get a job. Do you want a job? I'm like, yeah, cool.
I've never heard that kind of story.
I came back. So I started off as doing security as 19 years old and started doing security.
way.
And as the bands that were coming into the venue were getting bigger, he's like, hey, come help me load these guys in. So learned stagehand work from that. And then moved from the Peppermint Beach Club in Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
In '93, they started doing shows, moving me over to the Boathouse, which was in Norfolk, right down the road, which is a 3,200 person venue. And then we opened the amphitheater in 1996. I hung the first curtain in there, and
Whoa.
it's so weird now that I'm production manager there.
So it started by being a fan, hitting yourself so bad that the security manager said, you got to go.
No, the general manager of the building.
The general manager of the building. So he could, and then he's like, I'll just give you a job. Just go to the hospital so we don't
I
get
just
sued.
gave him the hardest time. Like, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm bleeding like a professional wrestler. And he's like, you are going somewhere. You're going to go get stitched up, and then you're going to come back.
He loved the tenacity, the grit that you had to be like, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
So what did you enjoy the most? So you were doing security, you were doing stagehand work?
Well, as a youngin, 19, 20 years
Yeah.
old, I loved doing the security part, the metal shows or whatever it was, and it was a good time. But as I say, you get paid more doing the stagehand thing, and you get to interact a little more. I said, this is even better. But then years went on, and I got sober in 2001, and then
Congrats.
23 years ago, just hit it.
Wow, congrats.
Thanks. But 4 years later, the production manager from the amphitheater just, came to me out of the blue. It's like, hey, you want to be the stage manager? I'm like, yeah, sure, cool. And I was doing construction at the time. I was building houses, but
wow.
So I split. I kept doing building houses and doing the shows and.
So talk me through, like, what does that mean to be stage manager at a venue?
At the time, it was. I mean, it wasn't a union house, so my production manager would advance all the shows. I would schedule the stagehands, the riggers, the loaders, just and make sure the show happened as it was supposed to. And I mean, and he eventually left, and like they were trying somebody else out the following year, and then. Eventually, Wilson Howard was just like, "How about this Heist guy? What's he like?" And I knew who Wilson was, but I had no idea. He knew who I was.
Wow.
But apparently, he's the one that promoted me. So
promoted from what?
From stage manager to production manager.
Okay, got it.
So now I'm advancing the shows and we ended up the stagehands are union in Virginia Beach, like at the amphitheater. So they made one of their lead guy made him steward, and the BA is also on site. So
we're gonna dissect all of that. So first of all, you're
going too
stage
fast,
managing. Talk about the responsibilities of stage managing versus production managing.
Stage managing, basically, I made sure the people I scheduled were there. I made sure the production manager would give me the numbers for riggers, truck loaders, stagehands. I made sure that they were all scheduled. I always schedule a little bit over just because people don't show up, and we always got to have somebody to fall back on. And the tours, if you're over, the tours love it that you're over and not under. Yes. So usually they'll let us keep them, just depending on the show. But
have you ever had a call where every person shows up?
Oh yeah, recently. I have a great relationship with my guys in Virginia Beach, and they're usually one or two over every show. So, and that's great. Yeah, they're amazing.
Okay, good.
So there have been times where different venues, like, people don't show up, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's like a third party venue. It's just like you got to get on the people, like different places, like unions in some houses. Some other houses are just they have their own labor company. Right. And if their people don't show up, it's just, they shrug their shoulders and don't know what to tell you. I'm like, it's not the answer. That's not an answer, So.
Yeah. So stage managing, you are making sure your guys and girls show up, that to push the cases, to put up the show.
Put up the show.
And you're kind of that person saying, hey, it's coming out of this truck, put it there. Like you're kind of
the
managing.
Tours have their guys to do that.
Yeah.
They just make sure that I have. They'll ask me, I need 10 lighting guys. I need eight sound guys. So we'll divide them up in departments, and then they'll take it from there.
And then production managing.
Production managing, I'm so in love with my job. I'm very fortunate. I count my blessings every day, and it's we advance the show. I get to meet all the tours that are coming in. I get to meet the production managers, the tour managers, everybody that's the backstage and a part of the building that show. Developing relationships with these tours, because they always come back. And if you make it a good day for them, they're gonna love coming back to Virginia Beach. And I get that a lot. Knock on wood. Yeah. But you get to advance the shows, and I hand off the labor to the union guys. They handle that. And like I said, they've been amazing lately. And I just make sure that the tour, the management, everybody has everything they need, from catering to dressing rooms, to bus parking, overflow, just anything and everything that has to do with the show. It's my job to make sure that it goes the way it's supposed to.
How far in advance do you start working with tours?
I usually a month out, if not 3 weeks. 3 weeks is
pushing it.
I like to be at least a month out, where I'll make the first call. I'm like, hey, you got a rider? You can send me. I'll get cracking on it. Then we can set up an advance call within, at least give me the rider a month out. That way I can get my guys the labor numbers. I can get catering set up. I can get runner vans ordered. Anything that has to do. I like to be ahead of the game, especially because we get so many shows throughout the year. I get this last year. I think we had 27, 28 at the amphitheater alone.
Gee.
But then I've had Charlottesville. I've got the Carolinas that I help out with.
As the Live Nation rep?
As the Live Nation rep.
We're going to get into promoter. So first, this is just PMing at a venue.
Okay, cool.
So say we're coming in and I'm like, we need this for catering, this for, we need this many hands for load in and load out. And then, like we need X in each dressing room. We need pipe and drape. We need all these types of things. You are making sure as the PM that day, everything's there.
Yes. Well, we usually get prime example. This last year we had Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
They wanted the backstage compounds inside the compound. They had a specific thing they ordered. So everything pipe and drape. We start the week before, or actually we had a show before. At least a day or two before is when we start setting everything up.
Wow.
And that way we know the morning of. I have all my deliveries, like my gases for like CO2 and cryo, all that.
Right.
I have my gases delivered the day before. My runner vans delivered the day before. Everything in a day in advance. That way the morning of, you're not scrambling like, oh no, what happened? So
yeah, so that when like if someone doesn't advance something and you're like, damn, can we get some lamps? Can we get whatever it is?
Exactly.
That's what day of is for the.
And usually, if there's something that's been missed, if it's not a weekend, if it's a weekday, okay, send a runner, or I'll have like if there's like for instance, we had a tour where there was a new person doing the special effects, and they missed a couple gas tanks, and so I called my guy, and he's like, all right, give us half an hour, we'll bring it. So
nice.
If it's on a Saturday or Sunday, it's a little different.
Yeah.
You got to make the emergency call, but that, knock on wood, that hasn't happened. So
True. Okay, interesting. So you're making sure everything's ready for them. Who do you meet with, like, at Walk and Chalk?
Walk and Chalk, I meet with production manager, stage manager, and the head rigger.
Got it.
I usually look for whoever I advanced with first. It's usually the head rigger that I run into first. But as they start coming off the buses, going in like the catering out to the stage, it's usually a stage manager, production manager. I like to make sure that I get involved immediately, make sure that, I show them because our production wing's on stage left. So I'll take them, show them their offices, take them down to the dressing room side on stage right, ask them if there's anything else that they might need at the time. They usually like to get set up, and then they'll come out, we'll do a walk out to front of house for camera positions. So usually it's the production manager, the stage manager, and the head rigger, the tour rigger.
Do you ever get sick of working on the weekends?
Absolutely not. No. This is, like I said, this is my dream job come true. I mean, I bartended for like many years, so it's like I'm used to working weekends. I'm used to working holidays. Yeah. It's just a normal thing for me. It doesn't bother me, and I've been very fortunate to be in this position, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Hell yeah. Well, this is why you are doing what you're doing. I mean, staying here for so long, doing it for so long. So take me through like, then what does a promoter rep do? And how does the promoter get involved with venues? And talk me through like getting
promoter
into
reps are pretty much like because there's so many venues in the Carolinas, and there's like, I think there's like 6 or 7 of us that cover the venues, and I don't have, we're up in a couple new ones up in Virginia this year. Pharrell's got a new surf park, and there's like a dome, that old dome site that we're rebuilding. Cool. But there was nothing really in Virginia to keep me busy year round, so they've been floating me from all the way down to Savannah. But it's basically the same thing that we do in like our main venues, like the amphitheater. We'll we'll advance the show for whatever venue it is, make sure, and it's just basically the same thing but different venues.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. So are you doing everything from a arena to amphitheater,
stadiums, and
theater, stadium,
everything? We cover
even if it's not Live Nation.
No,
it's all going to be Live, but I mean Live Nation owns all of the
I spent a lot of time in Charlotte this last year with the stadium of Bank of America, Ovens Auditorium, Skyla, the Spectrum. PNC, I did PNC Amphitheater a few times. But I love it down there. I love Charlotte.
What do you think is for you? You love the job. What are your biggest challenges in this job? What are the things that you're like, I don't want to deal with that?
Without throwing anybody under the bus, sometimes it's labor, dealing if it's not the people I deal with on a regular basis, and it could be labor. There's budget Sometimes you got like people will go over budget in catering or in labor costs. And
Right.
And I've never really had any issues with artists themselves or their management. Just if something was ordered and wasn't provided, it can get ugly, and so it's just we got to make it happen. It doesn't matter. There is no can't. If something's not done, it's gonna get done. So
Yeah.
I mean,
So I imagine you have all these relationships and people you call on, but how do you find more people when you want to just keep adding to your pool of people to call on?
well, that's the thing. I was like with Charlotte, especially Charlotte, Greensboro, and Raleigh.
Yeah.
They have an amazing, because the numbers for stadiums are just outrageous.
Right.
In Virginia Beach, Virginia, like we've never done like Bristow up in Bristow and like the DC area, they have a couple of stadiums up there, but around my area, the biggest thing we had is the amphitheater. So I've never really had it, but I've seen if Bank of America Stadium needs 150 stagehands and they need 24 loaders and 14 forklifts. I'm like, where are you getting all these people? And they come, that they know, that whole, and they've even come, from down south to come work the big shows. So it's like they have a system.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
What is your favorite best part of your day? You're working a day. What is the best moment for you that keeps you in this industry?
Waking up.
Waking up.
I wake up and I look forward to going to work. I mean, and it doesn't matter if it's somebody I really like or somebody that I'm like, just can't wait to get through the day. This is the job that I love this job. I can't express that enough. I've been very fortunate.
Jeez.
And waking up and going to work, that is what I look forward to,
Have you gotten to work Pantera?
Many, many times. Many times. I got to be good friends with them back in the day before the accidents happened.
Yeah.
And this last year before last, they came to Virginia Beach, and Grady, who was Dime's guitar tech, called me and said, "Hey, we're doing dinner with band and crew. You and your wife need to come join us." And they spoiled the crap out of me. I mean, when we went down there the next day, I got, had everything they needed at the venue, and just they hooked me up with some swag, some guitar picks, it was like family again, So it was great.
Would you ever go on tour?
Right now, no.
No, you got the dream job. What am I asking you?
No, I would definitely go on tour if I wasn't in the position I'm in now. Right now,
True,
I'm very very happy
you're
right
chilling.
now. So yeah.
What is
I'll be working with Pantera this next year with their Metallica shows. So,
Yeah?
We're going to Blacksburg and Charlotte, and they're playing a few places.
So whenever you're in the Virginia or the Carolina and then Savannah too, in those areas.
Savannah, not so. I mean, every once in a while I'll do Savannah, but the Carolinas, I'm there all the time. Virginia, Charlottesville, I'll do Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yeah.
John Paul Jones Arena. That's my other gig.
What advice would you give to, I think everyone wants to be able to have that answer of like, what are you most excited for? Just waking up. I love the job. Like, what advice would you give to people in high school or college that are interested in this world, don't really know how to get started? And what would you say to them?
Start at, I don't want to say the bottom of the totem pole, but start as a stagehand. I learned it all before I got into management. I was a rigger, I was a truck loader, I was a stagehand. Learned it all. Set goals. This conference here. Everybody. We are in the most incredible industry in the world, and people here are so positive about making it better. And I'm like, how do you make this better? It's already incredible, but they're doing it. And so, start at the bottom.
Do you have to join a union? Or
No,
can you
no. I mean, unions are good, for certain things, but if you're getting started, and like there's even like theaters, like in Norfolk, our theater isn't union.
Got it.
But start in the smaller venues. Learn it all. Learn the theaters. Learn the club venues. Then start working your way up as you get more experience. Do other jobs. Go from stagehand to rigger. Or to truck loader. Truck loaders are very important.
Yeah.
And just learn it all. In theater, there's other things. There's fly route. There's wardrobe. There's tons of things to learn. Like I keep hearing around here that it's always a learning experience in this job. It is. There's no not. I mean, it never stops. You're always learning something.
What do you do in a disaster? What do you do when something is really wrong? And give me some examples of is it weather related or
weather related is pretty. I mean, it's easier to handle than an accident. We had a bad accident a couple of years ago on our loading dock where they were unstacking lights and a girl got caught underneath. It fell over and the girl she's great now. She's doing really well now. Okay. But in that situation, I mean, weather we can see coming. We've got AccuWeather on radar and on phone. Mm-hmm. If anything happens, I mean, there's times where there was a hurricane off the coast. We had Kenny Chesney all set up and ready to go, and it just got too close to where we were, so we lowered everything to the ground and did it the next day. And Kenny went on the radio and was just like, "Hey, everybody, we got to postpone. That storm's a little too close, but wow. so weather we can handle because we have the connections to see it coming, and we handle it the way we're supposed to. Accidents, like I said, that really bad accident. We make sure that our people are always taken care of. Our people are safe. Safety is number one issue. I mean, but if something like this happens, we made sure that she made it to the hospital. We checked on her every day until made sure that she was taken care of. Told her not. She was more worried about losing her job or something was. I'm like, you get better. We'll make sure you get better. And so it's looking after our people is our main concern. This industry, we're family. Everybody's family. So it's.
Yeah. Well, what does the training look like if you want to get in? Is it kind of like you're learning on the job, or is there
a lot? Yes. Except for rigging, my guys in Richmond usually they're so amazing at what they do, and they will show you. They'll take you aside, or sometimes they'll even have like little classes, and they'll take you and they'll teach you what you need to learn rigging wise, tying your knots. Of course, safety is everything. Making sure your harness is on properly, just walking the beams. Stagehands is basically, it's on the job learning. It's following directions. It's, if you hire these people and they can't follow directions, it's kind of like either light a fire or you gotta,
Yeah, right.
Some of those other jobs out there that they can.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if you know nothing about lighting or audio or video, you can go in and you're basically just following.
I still don't.
Push. Yeah.
30 years later, I don't know how to run a lighting board. I don't know what I know how to hook it up. I know how to push it out to where it needs to go and help. And
run cable.
The guys on the tour know where everything goes. The guys on tour know how to connect everything, run it all. We push it out. Where it needs to be. They teach us how to connect it. Where it goes.
Yeah.
You don't need to have any schooling or anything. I've always been on the job training is like the best. Put your hands on it, get your hands dirty, and that's how I learned.
Yeah, and then so basically the people on tour are like the teachers for anyone that's working locally. Yeah. Putting it together, so you're plugging in the right things. Are stagehands also building the walls? Are they climbing, or is that usually just the tours?
The video walls?
Yeah.
That's usually the tours.
Okay.
The tours, sometimes, the tours do all the, we push the carts out, the riggers, pull the motors in the air, they lower the chains, hook them up, they'll lift them up, push the carts under, and then as they get higher, they usually connect everything on the ground.
Yeah.
But if they need to go up and do some connecting,
right,
the tour guys will connect themselves in and go up and do what they're supposed to. So.
Dang. Okay, so we got some good advice for people just getting started. Mm-hmm. We love that you love your job so damn much. Is there anything that could make this job better for you? Is there anything that you don't think the industry can improve? Where do you see you in 5 years?
Hopefully right where I'm at.
Hell yeah.
But you just, last year was an incredible year. It was so busy. And, Grant Lyman was just enjoy January and February because it's going to get, this year is going to top, this year is always trying to top next year. And that's every year, We did so good this year. We're going to do better next year.
Yes.
And so it's, I hope I mean, because people are always talking about their retirement plans. I'm like, I'm going to die doing this. There's no way I can retire. I can't sit still. This, I've always got to be a part of it. I mean, so.
And you will. This is,
I am not going anywhere.
That is so cool getting to know you. Thank you for being on the Gigs podcast.
I appreciate you bringing me in. This is so cool.
Is there a way for people to get to maybe like reach out to you if they want to get started and they kind of want to, give you a call or a message? Is there
I'm
socials?
on Facebook.
Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook and Instagram. Daniel Hart is on Facebook. But
Perfect.
Yeah, just Virginia Beach. If you're ever in town, swing by. We got the new dome site in Pharrell's Surf Park's opening in 25. So
Hell yeah.
That's going to be insane.
Hell yeah.
So.
Well, wishing you the best of luck with that. Thank you for doing this. It was really cool.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thanks.